We'll call the meeting of August 7 to order. The Rancho City Recreation and Park District Board of Directors. Brian, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Director Dennert?
Here.
Director Gray is absent. Director O'Brien? Here. Vice Chair Avila?
Here.
And Chair Freeman?
Here. Agenda review. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Chair, staff has no recommended changes this evening.
Item 4 is the opportunity for public statements on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone here to address the board on items not on the agenda? I have no cards. Is there anyone on Zoom? Seeing none, I'll move on to approval of minutes of the July 17 meeting. Any changes or corrections? Do I have a motion?
I will make that motion.
Second? That was Director Dennert.
Director Dennert?
Yeah, I'll second that. Yes.
Yes. Director O'Brien? Yes. Vice Chair Avila?
Aye.
Chair Freeman?
Yes.
The motion carries with Director Gray absent.
Consent agenda. Were there any questions on any of the items A, B, or C?
I would like to briefly have 6B removed because I do have both a question and a couple comments on that. So if I could have 6, and I dread asking that because I thought I never asked to have an item removed from the consent agenda. So this is
Okay. Do I have a motion on A and C?
I have a couple of questions on the check
Okay.
register. First question is check number, check number 107274 on the first page for $1,246.68, and it's to the County of Ventura Environmental Health State Fee. I was just wondering what that was.
Director Nakaoka?
Director O'Brien, I can't tell you specifically what that entails, but all the health permits are renewable every year after the fiscal year. So that it's either for the pool, the splash pads, one of our community centers,
Okay.
or our actual environmental waste permit that we have for this facility.
Okay, it was some kind of health certificate.
Yeah, so Director O'Brien, we have to get annual permits for certain operations from county health, and there's certain permitting fees associated with those. So we can get back to you on what this specific one is for.
Okay, all right, that's, okay, that's good. Second one is on the last page, is check number 107452 to Senel Construction Engineering for $11,250, and it's about the Wistful Vista car accident. Can you elaborate what happened?
Director O'Brien, we had a vehicular incident on Lindero Canyon Road in Oak Park that took out our post and cable fence. That's the replacement cost
Oh, okay.
under contract services.
Are we getting any reimbursement from insurance on that?
We will be filing against our insurance,
Okay.
yes.
All right. That was
Any
it.
other? Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Any other questions? Then
I believe Ed had a question on B.
well,
Don't
So
we
when-
take,
when-
I have a
don't we take a
couple.
vote on A and C and then come back to B?
Yes.
Do I have a motion on A and C?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Director Dennert?
Yes.
Director O'Brien?
Yes.
Vice Chair Avila?
Aye.
Chair Freeman?
Yes.
The motion carries with Director Gray being absent.
We'll go to item B, which is approval of resolution 2081, modifying district policy manual, chapter 7, 4B.
Okay, so since we've removed this, we probably, this shouldn't take long. We should probably follow the regular procedure for an agenda item, right? Questions, public comment, and then comments. Because I have one question and then just a couple comments. So my question is, because I think we were a little vague on this. I guess we were, because I don't know. But not relating to the actual change in the policy manual itself. But are we going to have this year a special meeting on the second Wednesday of December 11th? And the reason I asked that question is the concern I expressed about this year is the long gap between, I believe it's the 6th when the new terms start, and the 18th, which would be our next meeting after that. And the second reason I asked the question is, apart from the long gap, which I'll make a comment on after the public comments, but apart from the long gap, I do think this is going to be kind of an extra special year. We have at least one long-term outgoing member, which means we're going to have at least one new incoming member, and I'm sensing there's probably going to be a lot of interest, and I don't think we should be rushing through it. I think while I'm usually not a big fan of ceremony, there are exceptions, and I think, you know, once every 2 years, this is the exception. So my suggestion had been at the last meeting that we schedule a special meeting on the second Wednesday, December 11th. Was there agreement on that? Because I was kind of unclear.
I took the direction as this year we were going to do that, pending the election and how it goes.
Okay.
Right, and the timing of the certification and all that.
Right.
And then pending the availability of new candidates and families and things for that special meeting evening, so. But I took the direction as this year you guys
Right.
did want to do a special meeting for that portion of the.
Right. Well, can we tentatively schedule it then? Because
Sure.
I think if it's tentatively scheduled, I think the people who care are probably going to try to make it fit their
Yes.
schedule. I think there's going to be, I mean, I think it's going to be special for a lot of people involved, and I don't want the outgoing or incoming members to miss out on that.
I was planning to do a special meeting on our regular Wednesday, so I was looking at December 11th as the calendar.
That's what I was suggesting, right?
The-
Yeah, the in-between
calendar,
Wednesday.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we can do that, yes.
Yeah, I'm asking the question, so I guess the
Does
rest of
is
the
the
board
other,
would have to
yeah,
be
is
there.
the other board okay with that? Yes.
So I guess technically we should, if there's no other questions, we should go to public comment, right? Since it's
Okay.
up, right?
Yeah.
Brian's not.
Technically, we should do public comment on all the consent items, yes.
I hadn't thought of that, but there you go.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address this item on the date of the special meeting following the election? Anyone on Zoom? Seeing none, we'll move on and I'll have a motion.
Before the motion, I do want to make a couple comments about the policy itself. I think, I know some people wonder why this was so important, and I think it is, and I'll mention, I just want to be clear for a number of reasons. I'm glad we're doing this in terms of the policy manual. The reasons I had in mind when I considered this were the emergency situations. If in the interim time an earthquake occurs or a wildfire occurs, or I would like to think not another pandemic situation, if it's unclear who the board members are, that could lead to some confusion in terms of who's making any decisions. I have to say, since I brought this up, and even since the last meeting, I pay attention to what's going on in the community. And while there are a couple nuances that are different, there is, like in the school board situation, there is a little confusion with dates there. And while I could address that, it's not relevant to us, so I'm not going to address that. But my point is, I do think it was important that we did this. So whatever the situation, whether it's something along the lines of what happened in the school board situation, or whether it's an emergency situation, I think it is important that we have this pinned down and that it's clear who the board members are. And I think going forward, if I've read the statutes correctly, I think on the date of or around the date of, I think the board members can actually be privately sworn in, and then the actual date of our board meeting would be more of a ceremonial swearing in. I'm not saying we have to do that, and especially since we're shortening the time.
Yeah, I think we should, so the law says that board members take office, I believe, on the first Friday in December.
But they're not qualified unless they are
Right,
sworn.
but there's a form, a swearing in form that all of you sign. That's the document. So I would probably have the practice of having the new members swear in by that Friday, then they're the members, and then the ceremonial part would follow that. And then you would know on that first Friday you wouldn't have a gap in time between knowing who your board members are.
Right.
So we'll get people to sign the sworn statement before the first Friday or whatever the deadline is for the actual legal.
Yeah, and
Assuming of
I
office.
think that's a great idea, especially in light of
Right.
current events, so to speak. So, and then I think that was my only comment. And so I think I will make a motion. First, I guess I want to. Can I make a motion as far as the date of the meeting? Is that just a consensus matter, council, or?
Yeah, that would just be consensus.
Okay, so I guess, should we make sure we have a consensus that we want to schedule tentatively a special meeting for December 11th?
Does the board, by consensus, want to schedule a tentative special meeting for December 11th?
I just want to clarify before that, we'd have a meeting on the 4th and the 18th,
Right, those would be
regular board
where we'd
meetings.
have regular issues come up, and then the 11th would be so that it's not
The
rushed.
ceremony.
The ceremony.
And
all the
then,
things.
Dan, you're
attached.
saying regardless of ceremony, new board members would be sworn in by December 6th?
I think it depends on the date of the certification and when the election is in November. But generally, in most years, there may be a nuance every 7th year or something, but in most years, they're sworn in by law on the first Friday in December.
Okay.
But in some years, that's not possible because it crosses over with the time frame that the elections official has to certify the election. So-
Yeah, I don't think that needs to be part of
Yeah.
any motion. I think the idea is as close to that date as realistic.
Right.
I mean, it could be possible an incoming member isn't available on the
Does that
executive.
make sense, Ryan?
Yeah, and if we reach consensus on that date for the ceremony, that doesn't bind us in future years, correct?
Correct. The
Correct.
policy says after the first Friday in December, because that's when so that gives us flexibility, probably working through the chair and the vice chair on to what date we might do in future years, depending
Or even
upon-
the whole board.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Ed, your suggestion goes that we should do that, so it's just a ceremony, like we don't want to cancel the 18th meeting because of Christmas and just move it up?
Yeah, because if we start, my concern is, and what I've noticed in the past, if we start putting substantive items on that meeting, there's going to be a tendency, one, to rush the ceremonial items, and then people who are there on the substantive issues are going to have to wait a long time too.
Fair
So
enough.
my thinking was, and you know, we can all, I think we can probably arrange it so that the meeting on the 18th is not that long or something like that. But my idea was not to put substantive items because I think it takes away from the ceremony in the one case, and in the other case, then it makes people who are there on substantive issues have to wait. So.
And in practice, there are agencies that have a special meeting separately specifically for the ceremonial swearing in. So this isn't unique. I would like to keep the 18th as an option because that is the end of the calendar year. We do fees and there's different things. There may be business we need to get done before the end of the year. So I would like to keep the regular meeting on the 18th scheduled. If it ends up that we don't need one, we can, visit that as we get closer to that date.
And I remember that from previous years. It may not be a lengthy meeting, but I think there are things we're going to have to do.
Sometimes there's business items we
Yeah.
need to get done in December. We'll
So-
try to get them done to not have that, but,
And there is another factor in that. The next calendar-wise speaking, the other reason I think we're going to need to keep the meeting for the 18th, the next calendar date of a first Wednesday is going to be New Year's Day, and I'm not planning on being here on New Year's Day for a meeting. So if we didn't do it on the 18th, we would be going a really long stretch without a substantive meeting. So we almost have to do that.
I'm good with all the suggestions. Dan, if there's only one item on the 18th and it's probably not gonna have public input, and you want to move up one item to the ceremony night, I'm good with that. But I'm good with the special meeting.
Yeah, I'm just going from memory. I think there's going to be items, but anyway, so that's a consensus thing. And then as far as the item 6B, I'll make a motion that we approve the resolution.
Do we have consent? Sorry, you guys good with
Yes.
the consensus? Okay, thank you.
Do I have a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Director Jenner?
Yes.
Director O'Brien? Yes. Vice Chair Avila?
Aye.
And Chair Freeman?
Yes.
The motion carries with Director Gray being absent.
We'll move on to item 7, presentations, scheduled items, and public hearings. The first item is presentation of the part-time employee of the month for July 2024, Aiden Hanson, pool manager.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Teresa Pennington, the District's Director of Administration, will provide staff's report.
Thank you, Chair Freeman and members of the board. The part-time employee of the month for July 2024 is Aiden Hanson. Aiden is a pool manager in the Recreation Department. He's been with the district for 3 years, and this is his first Employee of the Month award. The person who submitted the nomination stated, Aiden consistently demonstrates Rancho Pool's core values of integrity, safety, and kindness with staff and community, and inspires others to do the same. He provides support and encouragement to new staff members, helping them build confidence and skills to be successful lifeguards. He is also dependable, trustworthy, and can always be counted on to perform tasks or communicate information efficiently and effectively, even in challenging circumstances. Aiden's passion for life-saving skills such as CPR, first aid, and various types of rescues makes this an ideal job for him. The district benefits greatly from his knowledge, teaching style, and compassion for others, and he's most deserving of this award. Congratulations to Aiden.
Wrote a little something down on this paper. Hello, Board of Directors. This is my 4th summer working at Rancho Pool. I'm really thankful for the growth experience, starting as a lifeguard, then going to assistant manager, and now manager. I'd like to thank my team for everything they've done for me. I wouldn't be here without them, and I really appreciate the recognition. Thank you. Stay.
Would someone else like to address it? I think you have people coming.
Aaron Perrick is the district's pool manager, pool recreation coordinator.
Sure, that works. So Aiden didn't want to talk, and he's probably one that doesn't want the recognition because he's just such a humble individual. But as you can tell, his peers are behind us. He definitely is one that is just a true leader at our pool, and especially for his age is something that's rare. One thing I'd love to highlight is Aiden is in charge of our junior lifeguard program, and this summer we had over 75 kids participate in the junior lifeguard program. As many of you know, we're having a national shortage on lifeguards. Many pools have been shut down across the country because of shortage of lifeguards. So Aiden's ability to train and mentor both the junior lifeguards and our current staff is, in my opinion, super remarkable. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you.
Very good, we'll get a picture. Is there anyone else, staff, would like to comment?
They'll share their love later.
I know.
The minutes might reflect that one of your friends gave you a double thumbs up. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
This is the important stuff, right?
Thank you.
There you go.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's great. You have a lot of impact on a lot of lives out there, so.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're proud of you.
Thank you.
In his nomination form, I'd like to highlight that there's two things that could sometimes be at odds with each other, but he accomplished both, safety and kindness, because you gotta be firm and direct people, but at the same time, you want them to feel welcome, and you were able to do both, so congratulations on that.
Anyone else have a comment on the board?
No, I just want to say thank you for being there and doing your job.
Exactly.
So, well,
With that, we'll go to presentation of certificate of appreciation to Scout Lucas Rado. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. For completion of his Eagle Scout project, Simi Valley Dog Park Informational Kiosk.
Thank you, Chair. Nikki Collier, the district's recreation specialist, who also serves as the district's volunteer coordinator, will present staff's report.
Good evening, Board. Park Supervisor Paul Friederborn and I met with Lucas in May of 2023 to discuss Lucas possibly doing a much-needed kiosk at Big Sky Dog Park. Lucas was able to complete this project with the help of his Scout leader, who also happens to be his dad, Jim Ratto, and his Eagle Scout mentor, Mary Margaret Preet. Thank you. Lucas has wanted to become an Eagle Scout since he was in 2nd grade when he joined the Cub Scouts, and he found enjoyment in scouting while giving back to his community.
I want to tell you, this kid is amazing. He did so much work on that project, and he asked some great questions. He had a lot of construction questions, engineering type questions, and we even had to go back and check and make sure we had the right answers for him. So he was really great, and he really did a good job. And the Troop 605 supported him, and Robert Mendez did a great job on setting the posts, and it worked out really well for all. So these are the things that will be going in the kiosk tomorrow. So safety things about coyotes and poison ivy and that kind of thing. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Picture.
Thank you, Paul. Will you guys join us?
And maybe your parents as well. You want to introduce your family? Yeah.
Your family here?
Yeah.
Would you introduce them?
Yeah.
Can I go to the mic?
The mic's all yours. Just say the names.
You'll want to go around something.
You can just say dad and mom if you want.
Should we go?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
we'll get it. Okay. This is hard. This is my dad, Jim Ratto, and then over here, this is my mom, Mary Ann Ratto.
Hello, everyone. Let's get a photo with him as well. Yes. And Chair, I just wanted to thank our staff, Paul and Robert and Nikki and the crews and Wayne that work with the Scouts on getting these projects done. And we spend quite a bit of time on it, and I want to express my appreciation for the job they do to work with the Scouts to get these completed. So,
On behalf of the board, thank you. Thank the staff and your efforts for the dog park, which is a very well-used part of our facilities. So thank you very much. I'm sure the users will appreciate it too. Thank you.
Lucas, I want to thank you for your work that you did. I'm not remembering Mary Margaret's dog's name. Well, it's all right, but that's the unofficial mayor of the dog park for now, at least. See how that goes and his ownership of it. I also want to thank Paul, Nikki, and Robert for all the work they do supporting our Scouts. I know it's a lot of work, but it allows the public to have ownership of their parks. And not in all communities do we have so many people becoming Eagle Scouts. That's because adults are willing to work with them and get it done. So appreciate all the staff working with you on that.
And I'll be really quick. Thank you, Lucas. I'm excited to get by the dog park and check it out and everything. Really appreciate the effort. It took me a while to figure out your name, but I can tell you have proud parents, and again, thanks a whole lot.
Thank you. Any other words of wisdom? Okay.
I want to echo what everyone else said. Thank you.
We'll go on to item C, which is a public hearing on the Rancho Senior Recreation and Park District annual budget and capital project for fiscal year 2024-25.
Thank you, Chair and Board. I'll be presenting the report. This is our fourth budget-related meeting that we've had. The Board holds a meeting in May to give staff direction. We adopt what's called a preliminary budget in June. These are all publicly attended meetings with comment. Then we have a public hearing generally in July where we focus on the Simi Valley area part of the budget. And then this evening is the focus on the Oak Park area of the budget. I'll wait for the board. I want to emphasize the board has seen this document several times. Since you last saw the document in July, there has been no further changes to the document or any changes directed by the board. This generally takes the entire budget. The picture here is this is what the board has adopted preliminarily. This is also depicts that the board's adopted a fiscally responsible and balanced budget. These are some of the items that show the changes between the prior year budget and the current budget. This is PowerPoint's available in your staff report. This is the area we focus on, the Oak Park area of the budget. I would note that there's been generally no changes to the Oak Park operating budget in terms of small things here and there, price increases, but no substantial level of service changes in the operating budget. When you look at I'll try not to make you dizzy, Ed, this is the approved preliminary budget revenue for Oak Park of $2.562 million. This is general fund only. And then we've got an expenditure budget of $2.854 million. As you'll notice from an operating perspective, the expenditures exceed the revenues to the tune of $291,000. That number is a budgeted number. Usually that by the end of the year, that number ends up being a little bit less because generally we budget it conservatively and we might end up with a little bit more revenue and we end up with a little less expenditures once we go through the year. But from a budgeting perspective, it's 291. The way we've been handling that, the imbalance within the Oak Park area of the budget is we calculate what is their savings account or the fund balance. And you can see as the deficit spending has occurred, I wouldn't call it a deficit because the overall balanced budget, we have other resources that are covering the imbalance, but you can see as this is imbalanced, their ending reserve is drawn down. So what was about $1.1 million in 22-23 is projected to be reduced to $813,000 in the current fiscal year. This list, I've highlighted the capital projects in the budget related to Oak Park, separate from the operating budget. The board is familiar with all of these projects that are slated to occur in Oak Park. I did want to note the pickleball conversion is budgeted. The deferred maintenance, a portion of the 985 is dedicated to deferred maintenance in Oak Park. These grants are all for the Oak Park community along with these other projects. And then a portion of the trailhead kiosk money would be kiosks for the Oak Park trailheads where we have kiosks in Oak Park. This is the capital outlay list. These are the items that Oak Park benefits from in your budget. Obviously the election, we have an election this year and that's the cost of that. Some of the utility vehicles that you just approved actually are going to be placed in Oak Park, and some other various smaller items that are occurring in Oak Park next year. Previously, the board did ask for a couple additional pieces of information. One is a more detailed explanation of the cost allocation, and I'll explain what that is when we look at it. And also, Director Dennert had asked for information on assessment districts and how they are formed and processed, so to speak. So cost allocation is where we take what we call central service costs and we allocate them to different areas of the budget. So for example, the finance department, if you're going to allocate the cost of operating our finance function, you look at percentages and you allocate the cost of finance to different functions in the district. So we allocate costs to the golf course, we allocate costs to this, and when we're breaking out Oak Park and Simi Valley, we allocate the fair percentage of cost of the overhead to the different areas in the budget, including the Simi Valley and Oak Park area of the budget. By practice from a formula approved a number of years ago, I indicated that this year's imbalance in Oak Park is 291. If you were going to update that and do a true cost allocation, which means an accurate or more precise 100% allocation, the Oak Park credit for revenue would be reduced by some. And you can see this is entitled full allocation. The allocation for administration would be increased. The allocation for planning and building would be increased. And if you were to do 100% cost allocation, the imbalance would be $894,000 in the current budget. So if you look at the fund balance and use the Oak Park funds, if you do a full cost allocation, the ending fund balance is going to be drawn down quite a bit more and quicker over time if you used a full cost allocation model. I want to explain a couple of the changes. So here in the property tax, if we get reports on assessed values and property tax actually paid by each community, the Simi Valley portion of the property tax is growing more because Simi Valley has more commercial development, more apartments, a lot of new construction going on, and Oak Park is generally built out. So as a percentage, the Oak Park goes down because a larger piece of the property tax pie is actually generated in Simi Valley than it is in Oak Park. So when you adjust for that more on a technical basis, the allocation is reduced. For administration, we had a previous allocation of 5%. Administration includes the administrative department, finance, human resources, and technology. We had been previously using a 5% allocation for that. 13% of our expenditures, 13% of our budget is actually Oak Park. So a truer cost allocation for administration would be 13%. So that would be the amount of time logically or on a basis that HR or finance or my office spends on work in Oak Park. If you increase that to a more accurate number, it would increase the allocation for administration from 129 to 291. The large increase here in planning and building, we have what's called central service crews. So we have an irrigation crew, we have an electricity crew, we have a couple of our specialty crews, and they move around the district. Prior to the prior formula, I had those crews budgeted at 5% or 5%. If you took the 13% of those crews, which is probably a better reflection of how much time they spend in Oak Park, that number increases to 428. So,
and what did you call those crews?
Central service crews. So irrigation is in all our parks. So the crew is a roving crew. Some of our other crews are more fixed. So if there's an irrigation issue in Simi Valley Park, they go there. If there's an irrigation crew in Oak Park, they go there. But generally, Oak Park has more park acreage per capita. They also have more open space per capita. So those central service crews are spending at least 13% of their time in Oak Park, given the nature of the work they do. Historically, we haven't allocated that full cost allocation to this budget. So if you do that, these are the numbers that come up. Another one is recreation. So the administrative function in recreation, so that would be the director, the administrative support out of the recreation department. We haven't previously allocated costs to Oak Park for the recreation overhead. That's the director's time. And so that if you did that, they would have an allocation of $58,000 of the recreation administration portion. I did want to note that this is, in the past, we use this as a guide that the board has, and this goes, separating these two goes back a long period of time. We do not formally budget, technically budget this way, in terms of what we do from an audit perspective. But this has been used as a guide by the district to kind of, keep an eye on, return to service, or, making sure that each community is getting about the level of service that community is generating. This challenge came about primarily because the school district in Oak Park took over the after-school club about 6 years ago. And prior to that, the Oak Park community was generating a net surplus because of the revenue we got from the after-school club used to cover a lot of the overhead. Once we lost the revenue, which is about $1.5 million from the after-school club, we started to see this surplus that it was balanced, and then it was a little less balanced. You can see it's growing over the years. So each year, as we don't have that and costs increase, the imbalance increases each year. In addition to that, if you wanted to consider a full cost allocation model, that would probably be a pretty accurate picture of what the split of revenue and expenditures is between the two parts of the district. Secondly, the board had asked for information on formation of a district, and I'll have the attorney jump in potentially if there's more detailed questions. But in previous meetings, we currently have an assessment district it's been in place since 1999. I think that's $44 a parcel. But that district was formed in 1999 under a certain assessment district process, and that covers both Simi Valley and Oak Park. So one of the questions that was asked, could the assessment in either community be raised under that assessment district? Meaning, could Oak Park have a higher assessment than, say, Simi? The legal answer to that is no, because it was formed as one district, so you can't have a different set of revenues or different per parcel charge under that assessment district. The second question was, there's another assessment district in Oak Park that was formed in the mid-1970s. At the time, that was primarily formed, as I understand it, to support the ranger program. That district was formed under a different set of laws regarding the formation of assessment districts. The attorney has looked into that and said that district, given that it's a bit dated and the laws have changed and there's been some court cases on that, that district would not be recommended as a mechanism to raise more money in Oak Park. So what you're left with is what other assessment district mechanisms you might have outside of those two if you wanted to pursue the idea of further assessments in Oak Park. The most common one now is a community facilities district. That's what most agencies are using to form assessment districts. It's a relatively new area of the law. It's a new way to form it, and there's a certain process under state law on how you go about forming that. To that end, the attorney and Director Dinner had asked, and others had asked before, what is that process? The attorney put together a pretty detailed memo. It's informational at this point on if you were going to pursue that, and that's not what we're doing. It's informational at this point, and for discussion, that is the process. It's in your staff report to form what would be a community facilities district, kind of timeframes and different steps that would need to be undertaken. So with that concludes staff's report. There's really no recommended actions tonight unless directed by the board. This is the opportunity for the public to weigh in on the preliminary budget. We will be back probably in September or October to adopt the district's final budget, pending this hearing and pending any further direction from the board. That concludes my report.
Was our attorney going to go over his demo?
If it's really a detailed process, if you guys want to take a look at that and have questions, or, I think it's just kind of a step-by-step if you were to go through that. I can have him summarize that if you'd like, or he could just answer questions if you'd like as well.
As the board, Director Evelyn?
Sure. I have a couple questions. I'll start with my question about that. Dan mentioned, either one of you can answer this. Dan mentioned that the CFD is the kind of the new way, or the, I guess the accepted way to do this now. What is the reason for that?
Well, so there's a couple other mechanisms. There's lighting and maintenance districts.
I'm aware of that, but you
I think it's just a different process that's been kind of smoothed out in state law. I'll have Ryan answer that, but it's I don't know the answer to that, how we landed on a CFD.
I mean, essentially, it's the passage of Prop 218, right, which requires more of voter input or taxpayer input before new taxes are applied. So we recommended, there's two ways in the memo. A CFD is the most common way. There's another way, which is an LLMD, a landscape lighting and maintenance district. Very similar process. You would have to adopt a resolution of intention. You'd have to hold a public hearing. Ballots would go out to inform the public in the affected area of what the hearing entails, of what the proposed taxes are. For a CFD, in order for that to pass, you would need 2/3 of those affected in the area to vote in the affirmative. For a landscape lighting and maintenance district, it would pass unless there's a majority that objects to that tax. So a significantly lower threshold with the maintenance district. I will say for the maintenance district, you're somewhat restricted in what those taxes can go towards. It's specific to lighting and maintenance and the like, and not necessarily general services, which could be financed through a CFD.
Let me ask you a couple follow-ups. The LLMD, is that, I looked at I read all that stuff. Is that similar to the process that occurred with the assessment we currently have?
As I understand it, yes, it was the majority protest, I believe. You know, I believe it was majority protest.
I think that's
Sorry.
correct.
Okay, and under the CFD, would that be a situation where the vote would actually take place by ballot as opposed to mailing in a postcard?
Yeah, so there's two ways to voice your opinion. One of them would be by ballot, or you could show up at the public hearing, actually.
And I don't think it's on your general election ballot, though. I believe it's still a mail ballot.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. It
To
is-
property owners.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So it would be essentially kind of like a special election.
Okay. Let me ask one more question. You probably haven't researched this. Is there a manner, it wouldn't be called an assessment, I guess it would be a tax or some other form. Is there a manner of doing this where the vote would be by a true ballot that gets sent to the voter?
Like in a normal election?
Yes.
I suppose, I'm not sure. I know this is through a special election process. You're asking whether or not it could be a part of a regular election?
Right. Is there a method by which this could be part of a regular election? I realize it would be called a CFD, or it would be called an LLMD. Maybe it would be called a tax, maybe it would be called something else, but where it would be part of a regular election process.
I'm sure there is a mechanism, but I'd have to get back to you on the particulars.
All right, now to my other questions. If you have the chart, let me see if that's it. Do you have the chart that shows the amounts being paid by Simi Valley and Oak Park in terms of assessment money? The line item?
So that would be these?
Yes.
So that shows the overall revenue that's garnered from the assessments.
So, is the now, is there an additional, in addition to that, is there a second assessment that you indicated Oak Park was paying?
Yeah, so the Oak Park, so there's one assessment here where it says Fund 3001.
Right.
And then there's a Simi Valley component to that and an Oak Park
Okay.
component. And then there's Fund 70, which is the special zone tax, which was been in place since the mid-70s. So when I'm talking about two in Oak Park, it's their portion of this one and that Oak Park special zone tax, this one.
Okay. And then my final question, we're going to completely going all over the place here. The pickleball situation where we have that funded. What is the status of the Deer Hill project in terms of the permitting, the appeals? Where are we at?
My understanding, and I'll have Wayne jump in, is that the project was approved by the planning department at the county. The appeal process ended on Friday, Wayne, and my understanding is, well, there was not appeal, and now the plans are over in the building department, and they're looking over the detailed construction drawings in the building department. So that's where I understand we have not gotten the comments back from the building department yet, as I understand it. That might involve a couple changes, but the appeal process, it's been approved, and the appeal process has run its course, as I understand it.
And if I understood, that's what we figured would be the biggest stumbling block is potential appeals?
Correct.
So where do we, I mean, I know you can't give an exact time frame. Are we still looking at the, right after the first of the year in terms of?
We are on
completion of the
schedule
project?
according to the calendar that, and I'll have Wayne if I'm wrong in this, we're on schedule with the calendar that was originally shared with the board. I think we're planning to go out to bid fairly quickly with the project, so that'll be the next thing the board sees. And I'll work with the staff now that we know we have the approval. It's kind of dependent on the building department now, but as soon as I know an approximate date that we're going out to bid, then we'll have a nice clean construction schedule, but it should meet the timeframes that we had originally committed to.
Okay, thanks.
I'll get that information to the board once we get the plans back from the building department.
Director Dinner? Do you have any questions?
I had a couple of minor questions. One of them is sort of building on Director Avila's question about doing the election as part of a general election as opposed to mail-in.
Yeah.
Now, when we did the assessment, this was before I was even on the board, in 1999 it was mail-in ballots to property owners only, right?
Correct.
And it was weighted based on the value of your property. Wouldn't we do it the same way?
Well, I think Director Avila's question is there another way? Can we put it on the actual ballot? I am generally aware that communities elected boards have an opportunity to put propositions on the ballot, like school board bond issues and such. So as the attorney indicated, I would imagine there's a way you could put the concept on a ballot, but we don't technically know that without a little more research. So I think there's both options, subject to us reviewing if that's a possibility.
I thought, yeah, my understanding of Prop 218 could be wrong, but I thought that you just asked property owners to vote on it.
That is an option. That's an option. The question is whether there's another option available to the board.
That's just, I wanted some clarification on that. And the second question is Oak Park aware of this assessment discussion? Have we?
So yeah, we have a mailing list for Oak Park. I think it includes about 20 community members that have asked to be on the list. We also did a social media post. I think we also notified the MAC chair. So we did send the notice of this meeting along with the budget to the folks that are on the folks that we are usually interested in our issues. This was communicated to them via email and also social media.
Okay.
And I also followed up and called several of the people that participated in discussions throughout the year in Oak Park.
Yeah.
And discussed not the specifics of it, but broadly the issue.
All right. Just didn't want them to be blindsided.
Yeah, I think there's about 20 Oak Park folks that are on our actual mailing list, and they were informed. Actually, we sent them the agenda, and then also Sandy Cavone sent them all a separate email, letting them know that specifically we were talking about the budget.
Okay, sounds good.
And
Any
I
other
would say,
questions before I open the public hearing?
real quickly, if we go down that path, Director O'Brien, it's a multi-step process. There's multiple public hearings. We would have to send ballots out well in advance. They'd have 45 days to review, and they could come in any one of those public hearings to voice their opinion.
Okay, great.
I have no speaker cards on this item. Is there anyone on Zoom? I noticed someone from Oak Park.
Can we get the
on the Zoom.
public feedback?
Danny Sue, did you have a comment?
I see Danny there. Danny, any comment? Do you hear us?
You'll get any comments from me tomorrow, probably. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, if you think of anything, I could take action based on your input tonight.
Yeah, no, this is just all new to me. As far as everybody being separated from CME and getting, this is all just new. I looked at it, I didn't understand it. and I understand it a little bit more now, so thank you.
Is there anyone else on Zoom? With that, I'll close the public hearing. Comments, Director Dent?
If it's a CFD or LLMD, I'm open to discussion of either one of those for the Oak Park assessment. Point out that there is a separate issue, property taxes, and property taxes are changing because Oak Park chose to be built out. They didn't. When we say passive language, they're built out. That doesn't. It makes it seem like it just happened. They chose to say you can't build an apartment, you can't build a house, you can't build there, you can build there. You can't build commercial, but you can build residential. Those were all choices. And the choices led us to the place where we're at today. The place we're at today is Ventura County is #1 for the worst affordability crisis in America. Not like in the top, and it's not all of California, so you can't blame just the governor for it. You can blame him some. But the worst, and the reason is not building. And that's it. CLU just had a conference, and they just said, because Ventura County refuses to build, we're the least affordable. And that means young families are going to move away. So if a place is built out, it didn't happen on an accident. It was meetings where they just decided to limit people to build.
We have boundaries. We have
Correct.
smart boundaries.
That's what I'm saying. Those were decisions that were made.
Right.
And when we decide, we can't have an apartment here or something, that's a decision. And sometimes decisions come with ramifications and choices that have to be made later. One of the reasons that the law provides for a ballot by property owners is there's not really a clean way to do it. If you do it in a normal election, you can't say you have a ballot but show me you own property. That's a property qualification. So property owners pay the tax, property owners would get to vote. If there's probably some ways to put it on the general ballot. The drawback to that is being that there's an election, we're coming up in November, we're probably not going to get the work done before then. And if we don't do it by then, we're probably not going to call a special election just for this. We consolidate with the county elections, which means we'd be kicking the can down the road for at least 2 more years. And then once you make the decision, it takes a few more years till the money comes in. So I'm concerned a little bit about the timing. I don't want to rush it, but I also don't want to slow walk it either. And at that point, Dan, I know there's a variety of numbers there, but that central service crew, if I could get that deal for my house where I could call up another city to have them pay for my house, I'd really like that. Like, just call up an electrician from another town. That'd be really nice. I'm going to guess when you said it's 13% or more, when you said that per capita open space is even bigger there, I'm going to guess if they're paying 13%, it might even be higher than that. So just like when we recently got a new mathematical formula for the property tax that's grown in Simi Valley and not in Oak Park, there might be something in that too. The reason I'm bringing it up now is I think the voters might not weigh in with detailed preferences at this point, but there's an election in November, and if the candidates can state their preferences when they run in the election, broadly, because it might take detailed discussions, if they're for or against or open, then the voters at least give some direction to a possible new board member or members to say, I would like to reduce services, increase services, cut spending, increase spending, instead of the new board going, I didn't know about this issue. Well, at least they know about it. There's 2 parts to it. One is how would you vote if you're a property owner, and the other choice is do we let people choose how they would vote. So if we say because the way it's done we don't like the way it's done, so we're not going to let them choose, well then we have to balance the budget without letting them choose. So I'd like to let them choose, and I wouldn't say if you say that you let them choose that's for a tax increase or against a tax increase. You're just choosing to let them choose the decision. Because maybe the decision is the level of services is high and they'd rather us find savings in the budget. But I'd like them to give that input. If it was on the ballot, I'd be open to saying it shouldn't be by mail more if we thought a mail vote was weighed one way or another. Like only people against the tax like to vote by mail or only people for a tax, then I would get it. if there's like a dedicated persuasion group trying to get one side out or another. But otherwise, I would imagine, and I haven't heard an argument that a vote by mail about a CFD or LMMD would support one argument or another. So I still think it's fair. Another issue is if we put it on the ballot, property owners can't vote, because not everybody that owns property is a registered voter, and they don't all live inside the place. So imagine somebody that owns an investment property in Oak Park. They might not live in Oak Park. So we put it on the ballot, they can't vote, but we can increase their tax without their input. And there's going to be a variety of people that might not live there, or they do live there, but the people paying the tax get to vote on it. The last couple parts of that is, by not making a decision, we're taxing them, but we're taxing St. Valley. I'm looking at Frontier Park and Duck Pond and saying they need work, and it's not our maintenance crews that are not doing the work, they don't have the resources. But if they had $291,000 to $894,000 more to do that work, that'd be nice. And I've been to all the parks, and I know that every park in Oak Park is in better shape than Frontier Park. And I know that every park in Oak Park is in better shape than Duck Pond. And I wouldn't say that I would like to continue subsidizing one community at the expense of another. You pay your own bills, that's it. So there's a variety of ways to do that, and I have some input on that. But more than my input, I would just like to leave it to the property owners of Oak Park to give us input on what they want. Exactly, do they want more services, less services? Are they fine with some cuts? Would they like us to find savings in our budget for them? Are they fine with putting off projects? I think most people would probably be fine with an increased level of service or the same level of service, and most people would be willing to fund that. But instead, in my opinion, if that's true or not, we can leave it up to the property owners. Last two things on there is, Dan, where are we with a joint use agreement with Oak Park School District?
We at the staff level have had discussions with staff with the school district over the last several years. And for one reason or another, we have not gotten together a completed joint use agreement. At this point, I would recommend that if the board wants to try to get that done, that we send a letter from the board to potentially the school board, either the chair or the board to the school board chair, to request that that your staff be directed to get that joint use agreement worked out and ready for approval by both governing bodies. So,
in that letter, would that be like the actual joint use agreement, or just asking to work?
No, that would just be asking, committing that, that'd be asking both boards, the school board and the board of directors here, that at your level you'd be committed to directing your staff to get a joint use agreement negotiated and drafted and completed.
And we'd still come back to us to vote on.
Correct. Yeah, it'd still come back for a vote, yes. So my recommendation to move that along would be to take it up to the elected official level and have you guys ask your staff to get that completed.
I agree.
So if you want to do that, and within the context of the budget, because it does involve revenues and shared costs and fees and projects, I could take that direction now to have draft a letter and have the board chair sign that if the board would like me to do that.
Can we discuss all this?
You're okay with
we're-
that?
Yeah, actually. Yes.
That would be the idea, yeah.
You're okay with that, Director Evelyn?
No, I have some things to say about that. We haven't finished discussion yet.
Well, I do want to make comments.
So this is the question. This is the
Yeah, I do
question
too.
period.
I'm not sure if
I don't think
Dr.
Brian's
Gibbons
done
are
yet.
done.
Are you?
I'll have more later, but
I believe we're in questions,
Well, no,
correct?
no, we did.
No,
we did
we're
question.
on
Okay.
comments.
Okay.
We're on Brian's
Okay.
comments.
Board comments, are your comments?
The last one, and Dan, I had discussed it with you. I believe it's Quimby fees, the new development offset fees.
Yes, impact fees, Quimby
Impact fees.
developer fees, yeah.
I would like at a future board meeting for us to analyze where they're at. My understanding is ours are relatively low in Caneo.
Yes.
So that means when
There
there's a
are
new,
rules on where the impact, where the Quimby comes from, and where the park, the area that it has to be spent on.
I'd like us to analyze that to see if our fees are appropriate level. I'd hate to find out large developments in St. Valley aren't paying for parks, but in Caneo, they are paying more for parks. I don't know what the appropriate fee level is. I just want to discuss it at a future
There's
meeting.
quite a formula actually based on land values and persons per household. It's a formula. It's been some time since those land values have been changed. So I'm thinking that probably the formula may be not exactly accurate because of the land values that go into the formulation of the fee.
Yeah, that will be an item for a future meeting to just discuss and analyze what they're at.
Will do.
Yes?
Okay, so I'm actually going to applaud Director Dennard for some things here, and then I'm going to disagree with him. So first on the joint use agreement, I think it's an excellent idea. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the letter is a waste of time. We have had in the Oak Park Committee, we've had 2 different conscientious school board members that are aware of our desire to pursue a joint use agreement. Their board is aware of the desire. You know, the more effective way is just to pick up the phone and talk to the board members there and you know, let's get our staffs to do something.
I do understand that they came to our meeting. I asked them to do it at our meeting, and they said they can't do that.
Well,
they were at the podium and they said they have no ability to put items on their agenda.
Plus, don't they have a new superintendent?
Can I keep going here? So for me, well, I don't think they said they didn't have the ability. I think the last one indicated he had a desire to pursue it, and then I don't know where that fell or whether it just kind of ended there when the committee ended. I don't know. But writing a letter, that if anything, that's going to prolong it. I think the biggest issue with the joint use agreement, and I'm looking at it from our point of view, my understanding in the past with our dealings with the Oak Park School District is that we've been getting gypped. They're getting the benefit of things that they haven't been charged for, and then they're charging us for when we're using their property. So I'd like to have a joint use agreement. I'm not so sure they're interested in it, but if they are, I'd like to have it, as long as it's on fair terms where we're not coming out on the short end of the deal. And because that's my other concern about the joint use agreement. But let me move on to the other situation. And I thought about this a lot. So I think we have to step back and see where we are with the Oak Park situation. And it comes back to one core point. We are not 2 different districts. We're one park district, and there are at the end of the day, if you want to even divide it into 2 parts, and I understand you have to look at it from the Simi Valley point of view, and you have to look at it from the Oak Park point of view. If you think back, especially in recent years, maybe not in the first year or 2 that you were on the board, Brian, but certainly in recent years, the complaints have died down in terms of, we're not getting enough revenue, we're not getting this done. The core of the whole discussion emanated from the fact that it seemed like meeting after meeting, Oak Park kept asking us for things. Why aren't we getting this? And then, to Dan's credit, he sat down with some of the residents from Oak Park who were expressing concern, and he showed them the budget, and he showed them the situation that they're actually in a deficit situation in relation to Simi Valley, and that was a good thing. And then following that was another good thing. Brian emphasized it at our board meetings, also probably meeting after meeting after meeting. And so because of that, we're looking at the budget now in a way that we should be looking at it to see where everything stands. And it is true that they are in a deficit situation. But when you look at it, it's not like Simi Valley relative to Oak Park. And I understand there's things that can be done at a lot of our parks, but it's not like there are a lot of complaints in terms of, well, Simi Valley should be getting more that type of thing. We've never really heard that from Simi Valley residents. I think the bigger issue is whether it's in Simi Valley or in Oak Park, we have to be thinking about how we're spending our money. And I come back to the same thing, especially in light of what we know about Frontier Park now. Is that money really better spent to upgrade an equestrian center, or should that money be spent on Frontier Park? So it isn't really all about a Simi Valley versus Oak Park situation. I think we're now aware of that issue. We're honed in on that issue. And while there is a deficit situation, it isn't an outrageous deficit situation. And at the end of the day, now that I look back, and now that I've had time on the board, and I look back at those early years, and I look back at those complaints from Oak Park, it was coming from a really small number of residents. And what has become clear to me in speaking with other residents, in watching election results, and all of that, is that overall, both communities, both the Simi Valley community and the Oak Park community, overall are happy with the services they're receiving. And so this all came because of noise from a really small number of residents. And that number of residents, where the noise is coming from, has gradually gone down with time. So I think we need to put a perspective on this. Yes, there is an issue. And yes, I think it's awesome that Director Dennert brought that issue to our attention and that we're now focused on that issue. But at the end of the day, is this really a big problem? And I think if you step back and look at it, it's not a big problem. It's an issue, it's something we need to look at. And so it's not something that requires drastic measures. Now, I've been looking for a way to use this reference for a while. There's this really well-written television show. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's called Mayor of Kingstown. It has absolutely nothing to do with our park district or what we're doing here on the park board. And by the way, if you decide you're going to watch it, make sure there aren't kids anywhere near the room or anywhere near the TV. But Jeremy Renner stars as the lead character in the show. And he's known as the mayor, even though the character is not the actual mayor of the town. And he's basically a fixer. And people will ask him what he does, and his response is, my job, and I'm not going to get into the content of the show, but his response is, my job is to maintain balance. And so in terms of maintaining balance, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to be happy with the way it comes out. It doesn't mean that everything's going to be exactly equal, but it means there's going to be a balance. There's not going to be one side that's hopefully agitated or completely agitated with the other side. It's not going to be where the scales are tipped so much one way or the other. And what's happened, and again, I'm going to give credit to Director Dennert for this, because this was brought to our attention, we've gotten to a point where we have a balance. There aren't that many complaints coming from either side. The dollars don't match up exactly, but we're on top of it, we're aware of it, and is it an issue? Yes. Is it a big problem? I just don't see it that way. So, and I will make one other point when it comes to assessments, and that's why I asked Dan to pull up the chart. Now, I used to be good with math, so if I'm wrong on this, I'll let you correct. You can even interrupt me and correct me, Dan. But I looked at assessment one, and roughly the populations of the two areas, Simi Valley and Oak Park, it's about a 9-to-1 ratio in terms of population between Simi Valley and Oak Park. The amount of money that's collected in the assessment is about 5-to-1 in that one assessment. And so even with that assessment, the amount of money that we're getting from Oak Park prorated exceeds the amount of money that we're getting from Simi Valley. If you add that second assessment, then it's about a 5-to-2 ratio, and the prorated value of what we're getting is even more from Oak Park than it is Simi Valley. So it seems, the idea that Oak Park needs to have another assessment in that sense doesn't, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now, I think everyone knows I'm not a fan of taxes and I'm not a fan of assessments. Now, that's not to say that I have some extreme view that nobody should be taxed. Obviously, then we wouldn't need government, and we do. So the issue, when we talk about someone is against taxes or someone is for taxes, what it's really about is how much are you going to tax people? And we live in a highly taxed state. People are taxed heavily. We have, just through our park district, 1 assessment already for Simi Valley and 2 for Oak Park. And so the tax burden becomes even heavier. And so I think that's something that we need to consider. And the other point I want to make is that I think gets away from us when we talk about an assessment versus something that we're going to put on whether it's a primary election or general election ballot. The assessment is just something that you're getting from property owners. All residents benefit from our parks, and that's a good thing. We want it that way. I mean, to be honest with you, non-residents benefit from our parks because we've got the best parks in the area. And that's just a fact. So there is something also inherently unfair about just taxing property owners. And that's one of the problems that I have with this assessment, as opposed to something that you would put on a primary election ballot or a general election ballot. And the other thing I have to say, whichever one of the 2 assessment techniques that Ryan described, either one that you're talking about, by not putting it on a regular ballot, a lot of people get this thing in the mail, and the way it's happened in the past, not just with our park district, but other assessments, a lot of times you don't even know what you're getting is something that you're voting on that's going to affect your property, and it's going to amount to a property tax. So a lot of times a voter doesn't even know they're a voter in this type of situation. It's a really unfair situation. And again, I'm not going to say I have a great memory, but if I recall, and I may be mixing my assessments up, but the initial public discussion, there was some contentiousness about having a vote in terms of this assessment. I guess it's now some 25 years ago. It wasn't all smooth sailing. And I think that's another thing that we need to keep in mind. And I will say one more thing. I do agree with Director Dennert that the process of getting something on a ballot would have to be at a specific time and may or may not take longer. I guess possibly could take longer than going forward with an assessment. But we also need to be realistic when we say, well, it might take a couple of years. Even if you're someone that's for an assessment, I don't know that candidly this is the time that you want to have, and I'm not for it, but even if I was, I don't know that this is the time I would want to approach a community about an assessment. And keep in mind, the school board pulled back on a bond issue that they were going to have. The Ventura County Community College District did the same, and the County of Ventura did the same with an affordable housing bond. And the reason is because with economic times as they are, with the mood of residents as they are, and I will concede there probably is a different perspective in Oak Park than there is in Simi Valley, and that is part of it. But apart from that, just the general mood of residents is they're not interested right now, whatever you want to call it, assessment, the tax, in paying that. So even if you're someone that's for it, I don't know that right now is the best time to be going forward with it. Probably if you're going to go forward with it, and I hope we don't, but if we did, you'd probably want to wait a couple of years anyway. So those are my comments.
Director?
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, here's the thing about the tax. Looking over the detailed report by our legal counsel, it looks to me like they're going to have plenty of opportunity to say no. And there's several public hearings and there's notice of intent. And, you know, if they don't want the assessment, they could vote no, and they could decide instead to maybe do without some services. That would be the other thing they could do, right? Those are basically the two things they can do. Because that $891,000, that's close to $1 million. That's a lot of money, and it looks like it's getting worse. So what we're doing now does not appear to be very sustainable to me. And so I think involving them in the discussion all along the way, right off the bat, is a really good idea. Get a sense of whether they are okay with assessing themselves an extra tax, or if they'd rather do without some services would be the way to go. And renters, of course, I mean, if property owners vote on this, renters ultimately will pay some of it because they will be paying some of this tax in the form of increased rents. So pretty much everybody's going to be paying this tax one way or another. So I think the most important thing we do is involve them in the process right from the get-go. And this started becoming a problem when the Oak Park School District took over the after-school clubs. We lost that revenue. They had, you know, and this has been getting worse. So everybody's been able to see, anybody who's paying attention can see this is going to be, it's a problem that's getting worse and probably will continue to get worse. So I say we jump on it and involve them in the process right away. And if they'd like to do without services rather than pay taxes, that would be fine. I'm no fan of big taxes. I hate big taxes. I think we're taxed too much already. So those are my comments.
First, I want to say thank you for all the information, because I think it's vital to our whole process for the whole district. Secondly, we are all one district, and I want to make that really, really clear. And in this case, I'm sorry we don't have a committee out there, but it is their decision. As far as I'm concerned, they have to make the decision to either increase taxes or we look at ways to reallocate funding. So it really comes back to them understanding what the situation is, and everyone understands that the costs are going up. I don't think anybody is not aware of inflation. But what I would say is that if there's even a desire to proceed on either one of these, and I understand it is just property owners, not renters, and renters will pay because property owners will pay more. But there has to be a big community meeting, maybe the people that were on the committee before, maybe people from the MAC. It's going to take time and effort. And the question is, does this board want to move forward with that time and effort to organize community meetings, provide the information? It will take staff time. But as part of that, the community will understand the budget better. A broader group of people will understand the budget better. So the decision that needs to be made is, are we interested in going out into the public and getting them involved in the discussion? And it'd have to be really clear that we're not proposing the increased tax. This is their decision if they choose to do it. So that the board doesn't look like it's promoting the tax. We're just trying to get a fair allocation on the costs. So the only way I would move forward if this board wanted to get out into the community, have a community meeting, have all the information, get feedback. It'll take multiple meetings. It's not going to be simple because there'll probably be misunderstandings. But at the same time, they have to be part of it, and that's just what this district has to do, I think, for the people that live in Oak Park. It's a great community. It's well served per capita. They're better off than Simi Valley. But we have the benefit of new construction and Quimby fees, and so reassessment and higher taxes, higher property tax. So, you know, it's a little different, but I don't want to be in a position where we're saying we're putting the two against each other. That's not what I would want. I want them to understand and have community meetings. But I do think a letter to the school superintendent, to the school board, now that there's a new superintendent, is a good introduction to get it started, and then all of us can follow up. I think once the introduction is made through a letter, we can all.
I would like to send a letter. I am open to its argument that it might not be effective, but being that it's been close to 6 years or more and they've gone through 3 superintendents, and the last time I heard, well, we just have a new superintendent, so we can't do it. And now they have a new superintendent. It just needs to get done. It was at our board meeting. Zach, you could tell me, I think it was, we had 3 school board members that night. I think it was Tina. Tina Wang said that she would have to check with her staff to put it on the agenda. And I said, well, no, you're a board member. You put things on the agenda. That's how that works. I asked Jim Monahan. He said he'd look into it. And he said his staff is considering it, but they have a lot of things to do. I get that, but they're doing that at the expense of taxpayers. And they're doing it at the expense of taxpayers in Oak Park, having staff send small bills back and forth. So them not prioritizing it, it's not their staff, from my understanding. Their staff's been working with us. It's just costing people money and time. So I'd like to send a letter, and we also follow up individually. But at least that sends a signal we definitely want to work on it. Because I've heard from other people like, no, I think it's Rancho Simi. I think it's, you guys haven't worked on it. And I've definitely asked multiple times over the years about that. So before I get to my other comments, where are we at with sending a letter?
Yeah, if you're gonna do that, black out my name on the letter. I'm against it.
So we just sign by the chair?
Yes.
I would like that.
Okay. Consensus?
Yes.
Okay.
And then my other comments is, Ed, you're right, complaints have died down, and I do want to acknowledge it is a small number that were complaining before. It wasn't most people in Oak Park. I think most people in Oak Park are happy with the level of services, the conditions of the parks, the recreation staff. They have beautiful parks. I'm going to guess one of the other reasons that complaints are not big is, well, who would complain that they're being subsidized? Who would complain that they're getting an extra $800,000 from another community? If Oak Park wanted to donate all that money to St. Valley, I would not complain if they want to do that. So I think they should be very happy. Now, I know this sounds awkward, but Zach's not cost allocated currently, his position.
Correct.
So they get a free Zach. It's pretty awesome.
A portion of Zach.
Yeah, a
like
portion.
Like one leg.
Yeah, 10 to 15% maybe or something. Yeah. Well, who would, if you get a free Zach or a portion?
Well, aren't we getting more of a free Zach than they're getting?
We're paying for him.
Well, they're paying for him too.
They said it wasn't cost allocated in that position. That's just coming out of the CME side.
So, do you view this as 2 different districts or 1 district?
I get what you're saying by 1 district, and if that was the argument, then we would make sure that the parks were relatively the same condition throughout the park district. But I don't think Oak Park views it as 1 district when they talk about services. They would never accept a Frontier Park in their community. They'd be outraged. Can you imagine how many meetings and emails we'd get if a park like that existed there? So I would say if you want to argue 1 district, then we would have a level of service throughout the district that was relatively the same. But I would be very happy if we had a per capita open space and parks at a higher level. But Oak Park has a higher level of open space and parks and a higher level of service. I don't think the budget is an emergency situation. I agree with you there. But that's why I would like to address it. I appreciate your kind words bringing this to our attention, because there's lots of options, and this is an assessment district is just one of many options. But if we make slow progress, we can avoid dramatic changes. If we make very slow progress, the public probably won't even notice because the level of service will stay high and the parks will be in good condition. If we don't make slow progress, then over the number of years, it gets worse and worse. So I like slow progress over dramatic change. Kate, I like what you said about maybe they'll vote against an assessment, or maybe at those meetings, maybe the community shows up and tells us they're so against it, we shouldn't put it on the ballot. As you said, it's a bad time. And at those meetings, if that's the feedback we get, then we go in a different direction. Because putting on the, asking them for their input is not the same as telling them that this is the choice. Because there's a lot of other choices. We can increase revenue, including increasing revenue from classes. But when we had an Oak Park committee, I couldn't get them to post about our classes. They came to the committee meetings, sometimes not even informed what the agenda was for the night. But I asked them, post about our rentals and stuff, because we could increase revenue. We could increase revenue from I'm not saying this is a good idea, but maybe tournaments or scheduled classes at the pickleball courts. There's a variety of ways to increase revenues besides taxes. So if they came to the meetings and said, we'd rather cut services, we'd rather increase revenue, we would rather an assessment, I'll be open to what the community wants. I don't see it as anti-tax or pro-tax, but just balancing out who's paying for the services in their neighborhood and their community. I don't think, I agree with you that people of Simi Valley are not frustrated or outraged by this and they're not coming to our meetings, but that's because they don't realize it's happening. I don't think the average person in Simi Valley realizes they're subsidizing Oak Park to this level. And if they did, they would ask, why would you be doing that? And if we made an argument it's one district.
My answer is it's all one district.
And if they said that, they'd ask, well, why is Duck Pond or Frontier Park in bad shape and Oak Park's not for one district? And we would say, well, they have a school district and they took over their after-school clubs and they haven't responded to a joint use agreement. But, so, I don't see as having public meetings as favoring the increasing the tax rather than asking them what do they want. Elaine, I do agree with you that there could be, we would need community involvement. And that's one of the reasons the Oak Park Advisory Committee was not working. Because I asked them at meeting after meeting, and Ed and I at those meetings would disagree with each other. And for some of the same reasons, and we try to educate them. But that committee did not have the interest in discussing that. They wanted it to be, well, we want more things, but we don't want to discuss that. That requires too much energy. At one meeting, they actually said that's Richard's job to figure it out. And that was a comment. You have that PR guy, make him figure it out. Well, I asked them multiple times, tell me which one of these solutions, because there's lots of different solutions that you want. So that was our advisory committee. But that advisory committee was just people from Oak Park, some of them asking for more services, but not trying to weigh in on the choices to be made. And I was looking for advice, like, well, there's lots of choices to be made. So I would like to move forward with discussions about it. I wouldn't want to prioritize it over, passing this year's budget. I wouldn't say that we need to do it at our next meeting. And I wouldn't say, because Elaine, I'm sensitive to what you said about staff time. I don't know the direction from the public on it. So I wouldn't want to make Dan, your entire team do a massive presentation only to find out the public and the board doesn't like it at all. So I'd like a slow process with community input to just let them know the process. We could maybe invite a member of the MAC to be at a meeting so we can have a discussion so that they understand that part.
I mean, maybe we have notification in the Acorn to a public meeting at the community center with the idea that we want to educate the public in Oak Park on the park maintenance and the financing of the parks and education on the budget. I mean, without putting forward any new assessment, just to start out so that people understand what the situation is.
I would like that if it was also listed as a choice. You could pass an assessment, you could cut services, you could increase revenue.
Right, as part of the budget discussion.
Right. But as part of that realistic, this is one of those choices, but choices should be made. The reason I mentioned that part is, Ed is right, if it was on the ballot or by mail, whichever one, it might not be popular and it might not pass. I would guess that it might, because Dan, you said MRCA often uses CFDs and they usually pass, or always pass.
Yeah, for the most part, MRCA's, they have community facilities district, and it's usually vegetation and fire management, trail maintenance, and those have routinely passed in the Santa Monica Mountains area. I just wanted to make a couple of points, just not to take a side.
I have some stuff I still want to
Yeah,
say too.
okay.
Are you done?
So that's pretty much it, but I would like to move forward in not a fast but deliberate manner. One of the reasons is maybe somebody runs for the board and says, this is the way I'd like to do it, and the voters say, no, that's not a good idea, well, that means the voters have input because we've been discussing it.
That's the whole point of being a voter. Yeah.
And the last part, Ed, you said it might not be a time to put on the budget. Of course, it might not be a good time to put on the ballot, but if you're being told either we'll subsidize you heavily or you'll vote for a tax. Of course, I'll vote for the subsidy every time.
Yeah.
But if you said, well, here's all your choices, which one do you like? And I bet most people, they wouldn't want to solve it in one way, they'd like a mix. So that I would like to have public input on that too.
But to that, we'd have to be very clear on what the changes would be, that they would be reduced, what services would be reduced.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
That's it for me.
May I speak? Okay, great. So first of all, this is going to be kind of a combined question and comment. There is one thing that Director Dennard said that I've been thinking about. In fact, I've been thinking about it for a year and I keep coming back to it. Zach, where are we as far as like increases in rentals? Because I think when I was talking to both you and Sandra about a year ago, at that time we felt we were already way too low and we haven't had anything come to the board in terms of proposals. I think until we've exhausted all that, it would just be, I just can't consciously see how we would go to the community. So I think those are things we need to explore. I thought we would have seen something by now.
Yeah, to answer that question, both Sandra and I have had discussions about doing some research and bringing back a potential analysis of the Oak Park rental facility compared to comparables that are competing, much like we did with Strathern.
Right.
My intention was to probably try to queue that up alongside the overall facility fees discussion that we typically have in December. So there was some research and some work done. I think we are a little underpriced for the value you get in Oak Park. That being said, we haven't obviously officially brought that to the board's attention at this point.
Yeah, probably more than a little, and I just think it would be irresponsible to not look at other avenues like that first. So that's something I would like to see before I would even entertain anything like this.
But I think that's one of the items that would be brought up at a public meeting. See how they felt about the increases or being told about the increases.
That's one of the options we bring up.
Okay, may I finish?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So there are a couple things where I agree with the chair, and I mentioned it before. We are one district, and we can't get away from that. We have to look at it that way. But the big thing that the chair mentioned that I'm completely in agreement on, it's not something that just needs to be stated, but it's something that we really need to consider closely. And that's staff time. This whole thing is just like, has got my head spinning. We're in a situation where clearly the mood of residents is not, not that it ever is, but clearly is not anywhere close to wanting to think about bonds or assessments or taxes. And we have, and frankly, I think we're a better agency than all of those three, but we have three separate and distinct agencies that have reached that same conclusion in some form or another. I'm not saying that's exactly what they're saying, but in one form or another, they recognize that. Our school district, the community college district, and Ventura County. And they've all reached that same conclusion. And without looking at other revenue options, and without considering, here it is. One of the concerns that we've had, and one of the reasons that the outreach meetings that are official park district meetings, and one of the reasons that the Oak Park Committee is no longer in existence, is because it's a drain on staff time, and then to take up more staff time with something that where we haven't explored other avenues, and that in terms of the mood of the community is not the time to go forward with it. I think everything is being, I understand the ideas, apart from my distaste for taxes. I understand the concept, I understand why it's being brought up by Director Dennard, but to have this be the time that we go forward with it, is just, it's just like the reverse of how we should be thinking about this. This is exactly not the time to be going forward. If we were in a crisis situation, if we weren't maintaining a balance like we are, that would be different. But that's not where we are right now. So even though I'm probably still not going to be happy about it, if we're going to drain the staff time, if we're going to try to, and we're going to try to come up with ideas, well, this is what you're going to lose, and this is, at least do it at a time when residents or a community would be more receptive to something like this. So to me, I just don't get it. I think this is probably, with the exception of 4 years ago during the pandemic, this is probably the worst time to do it. I mean, this is the worst time since the pandemic to even be thinking about something like this. So I can't state just how strongly opposed I am to this on so many levels.
Director Nello, may I ask a question?
Of course.
Are you opposed to the meeting or the proposed assessment? Do you want to involve the community in a discussion, or?
I think this is an ill-advised time to go forward with the discussion without looking at other revenue possibilities, with a situation where we are maintaining a balance. I'm not saying dollars equal up, but we're maintaining a balance. And in a time where we know the mood of residents is not wanting bonds and assessments and taxes, and we have evidence of that based on what other agencies have done. And we know, I mean, look, we hear it constantly, and it's true. I mean, we hear it from Dan. I go and talk to employees and staff myself. I mean, we're thin. We're not getting projects completed when we want to get them completed. And you know, we're to put another drain on the staff at a time where it's clear that even if it's people who, you know, they're okay with paying for certain services and paying taxes and assessments. I know everybody doesn't think like I do about that, but overall, this is not the time. Not only is it not the ideal time, but it's the worst time since 2020 to even be thinking about this. So I don't think this is the time to enter into those sessions, and I don't think it's the time to drain our staff for that.
Because my comments were not to propose an assessment, but to have a community discussion on services and what changes or adjustments can be made, just so the community is part of the discussion. I don't want a board to make that decision. I think that they need to be part of the decision. That was my point.
Elaine, I agree with you, because if next year I said, well, I don't want to subsidize it by another $800,000, and then we cut drastically, people in Oak Park would say, well, why didn't you allow us to give input?
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. I would be, if I were a resident of Oak Park and all this stuff happened without my input, I would not be happy. It's like, why didn't you talk to us? I think we do. I think a public meeting is entirely appropriate.
I mean, it's not to propose a tax. I would not be going out there to propose a tax.
We have to say, here's our problem, here are a few solutions, what would you guys like to do? I think that's a good idea. I think it's kind of required.
I heard one solution was to subsidize Oak Park more from St. Valley. That was a community input. They said we have commercial developments to tax here, so we could do that.
Okay, that's, I mean.
Well, so.
But that means we have realistic, actual solutions we can do.
But telling them now before it becomes an emergency situation is a really good idea.
So why don't you, I know you're not doing it tomorrow, but maybe you want to work on this tonight and come up with some solutions for them by tomorrow, Dan. But why not why are we scheduling all these separate meetings? Do it, you know, pick a time and a date that works. It doesn't have to be the time we have right now for the next outreach meeting, but use the next outreach meeting for that. Why do we have to have, what is the purpose of that meeting if it isn't going to be to discuss things like these?
I do like that
I
idea of
don't
the
get
outreach
it.
meeting.
I don't get it.
I
I mean,
would-
why do we have to keep having more and more meetings that only 4 or 5 people are attending anyway? I don't understand why that is a good use of our staff time. I don't get it.
For the next community meeting, I think it might be well to have our agenda posted and have that discussion and try to encourage people to come to it. And specifically invite the people that were participating in our committee and maybe the MAC and, you know, those people that are on the MAC from Oak Park. Invite them to discuss the Park District budget, not, you know, just so that they understand the reality of the financial situation.
And you could probably change that meeting to an evening time, because that would probably be when more people would attend.
I mean, just, I'm not asking for a special meeting. I don't think that's a good idea, but I think using the system we have works better.
I like that community outreach meeting. Dan, you could make several stakeholders aware we want to go over options at that meeting.
Now, and the other thing, if I know the date of that meeting, I believe it's mid-November. So whoever it is, you're going to have you're going to have, at a minimum, you're either going to have a board director who's already on the board representing that district, or you're going to have a director-elect. So I think, you know, it would probably, I can't tell someone else what to do, but I'd probably highly advise whoever that person is to attend that meeting. And then from that point on, I guess it would depend on what transpires at the meeting, but from that point on, if this issue is being pursued, obviously that would be the representative that could take the lead on communicating with the community. And if you know, if it was something that people were actually like, yeah, we want to go forward with this, you know, then we could look at having another official meeting from the board. But you know, at some point, you know, someone's going to have to communicate. We can't have special meetings for one community for every issue that comes up. So, you know, I think obviously how we would go from there would depend on what happens at that meeting in November. But at that point, as I say, we would have a current board director or a director-elect who would then be sworn for a term in December. And again, depending on how that meeting transpires, they could either take it from there, or if the meeting went in the direction where you know, things were going the way that, say, Director Dennert hopes they would go, then maybe that would be where we look at setting up a separate meeting that's geared specifically only for that issue. So that's my suggestion, but I don't think I would drain extra staff time at this point. I think we have the outreach meetings in place. We have one in November in place. Let's use that and see where that takes us.
I like the community outreach meeting idea. Dan, you said, Ed said the next meeting was when, November?
Tomorrow, but in November.
Yeah, we have 2 more on the calendar. One is this tomorrow, every 2 months.
Because of the
November, yeah.
the next one's November, because as it is, we only have one board meet. There's issues with conferences and holidays in October. So even we have one board meeting that's not on a regular board meeting date, only for October. So I think that's why you scheduled the outreach meeting in November instead of October, because October wasn't realistic.
I think it's Rosh Hashanah. Is it Rosh Hashanah? Right?
I think there's a couple of them.
Yeah.
There's Zach, help me out with this. You're the one who. There's also
Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, all take place, I think, in October.
right. I think there's also in any event, at a minimum those. And I believe there were some conferences or something scheduled. And I know, I think even Josh may have had an issue with the date. I know we have one meeting scheduled, regular board meeting in October, and it's not on a regular board meeting date.
Well, I'm good with that schedule, because the meeting tomorrow, the idea of the community outreach meeting is a conversation goes back and forth, not necessarily a lot of staff reports. Dan, for the people that do come to the community outreach meeting tomorrow, you could not in detail, but broadly go over the board discuss these several ideas. And if they have any input, they could give it. If not, they'll come to the next one and give it.
And I think, and again, I'm not exactly excited about this whole thing, but I think if you're really going to go through with it, for those of you who think this is a great idea, I would probably schedule the November outreach meeting in the evening, because I have a feeling if you're going to get any meaningful attendance, that's probably the time when you're going to get meaningful attendance.
And if I can just comment, we have to be very clear that it is not a discussion of pickleball versus tennis. Seriously, we're not talking about capital projects, we're talking about overall operations.
I like that plan. So tomorrow, Dan, you broadly go over it, not a lot of details, and then the next meeting in November, it's not pickleball and tennis, but go over it more and do it in the evening so more people can attend.
Right. The only thing is, I do think you're going to have at least a segment of the meeting, since we already advertised it as a regular outreach meeting. You probably are going to have a segment where if someone wants to discuss something else, they at least have the opportunity to do it, even though that won't be the gist of the meeting.
That sounds good. I just want to make sure there's election day just before that. We will be advertising this meeting right around election time, so I just want to make sure the board's aware of that nuance.
I like the idea, because that's part of the reason I brought it up now is not to get it done now, but a conversation started. So as people campaign, they could say, one person likes this idea, one person has this idea, and let the voters decide. I do like what you said about revenue options. I don't think that would close it, but that's kind of the point. It's probably best not to close the gap in one way. Maybe more revenue, maybe cost savings.
Just like swing with me a little here. It's not about equaling out the dollars, maintaining a balance.
I was thinking about that maintaining a balance. We do have many nice parks in St. Valley, but I still think that maintaining a balance would say we had public input that they won't bring their children to Frontier Park, their neighborhood park, but there's no park like that in Oak Park that people would say it's too dangerous to bring them to. And if we had more revenue in St. Valley because we weren't subsidizing Oak Park, we could have addressed that, or we will address that in better ways. I like the community outreach, and Dan, you can update us on how that goes. Not with an agenda item necessarily, but in your manager's report, the meeting afterwards. And as far as the timing goes, I can't think of a time it is good to pass a tax. If we would have said pandemic, obviously not. 2021, 2022. I'm going to guess next year would be a bad time too. Unemployment is at pretty much record lows. Inflation has been not good. But the next thing is there's going to be another financial problem.
When was the last time, name a year, when was the last time you had 3 local agencies that were considering bond measures and decided not to go forward with them?
I could see that you're saying that the public doesn't like it. But what I'm saying is there's not going to be a financial time where the public just says, sure, raise our taxes, we don't put thought into it. So if you told me that, if you'd give me a number, like GDP has to grow by this percentage, you'd vote for it, I'd be excited.
But there are times where it's like stomachable, and then there are times where it's clear that it's not in the cards. And I can't see, with the exception of 2020, any time I've been on the board where it's been telegraphed so loudly that this is not the time.
So if that was true, then I would go back to, we could possibly raise revenues, that's not going to close $800,000. And there's never going to be a time where Oak Park says, well, sure, we'd rather just give away the subsidy. So I'd like to close that gap between it. And that's my way of balancing it out. So I like the idea that with board input, that all 3 of you said, use the community outreach meetings to get some input on that.
Does staff have a clear understanding moving forward?
We're going to, as a part of the November community outreach meeting at a later time, we're going to introduce have a financial and budgetary discussion to educate folks and take comment, and we'll go from there.
And for tomorrow's meeting, broadly go over it.
Correct.
Good.
Very good. Is there any other discussion on this item? That being said, We'll go to item 8, continue business, and there is none.
Actually, can we take a short break?
Sure. We'll take a break at 8:20. We'll be back at 8:25. I'll call the meeting back to order. The next item is continue business, and there is none. New business. Item A, approval of the purchase of one Toro Groundsmaster 5900 T4 diesel riding mower and 3 Toro Groundmaster 7200 diesel riding mowers through California multiple award schedules.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Nakaoka will provide staff's report.
Chair Friedman, members of the board, based on the information provided in the staff report, the Park District Ground Maintenance Department cuts approximately 293 acres of grass on a weekly basis in Simi Valley. Most of this grass is cut by a mowing crew, which consists of 2 full-time and 1 part-time employee. For the larger flat areas around the district, the mowing crew uses the district's existing 5900D riding mower, which is capable of a 16-foot wide cutting path. This mower was purchased back in 2014 and has accumulated extensive operational hours and is now experiencing an increased number of breakdowns and service repairs. Additionally, the mowing crew has issued 2 72-inch wide riding mowers to cut the majority of the neighborhood parks, which have larger grass areas, where the 5900D cannot maneuver. These mowers were purchased back in 2016 are still in relatively good operational condition. The perimeters of the community parks and some of the smaller neighborhood parks are cut by one of our 4 satellite maintenance crews located at each community park. Some of the mowers they use were purchased back in 2001. Due to the age and frequency of repairs, staff is requesting to purchase one Toro Groundsmaster 5900 T4 model, which is again a 16-foot wide riding mower, and 3 Toro Groundsmaster 7200 series, which are the 72-inch wide mowers for the Park District. 3 of the new mowers will be issued to the mowing crew, which is the larger 16-foot wide mower, and 2 of the 72s. 1 will be issued to Rancho Simi Community Park to replace an inoperable 2001 riding mower. It should be noted that the Park District will retain the existing Toro 5900D mower as a backup mower for the mowing crew, with the worst of the 3 2001 models being salvaged for parts or surplus in conformance with the district policy. What we do right now is we really don't get rid of our lawnmowers. We don't put them up through public bid or anything to get rid of them. What we do is we take them apart. We take the tires, we take the blades, we take the decks, anything we can save to replace or as replacing the parts for our existing mowers. Robert and the mechanics have done a wonderful job. Once they're done, the skeleton is scrapped out when we sell it off. Staff has procured a written price quote to replace the mowers from California multiple award schedules. Through CMAS, these mowers will be purchased through Turstar Western, a local authorized total sales representative. The aggregate purchase price of all 4 mowers is $251,680.91. Currently, the Park District's budget for fiscal year 24-25 only allocates $225,000 for this purchase. Therefore, additional funds to cover the purchase of these mowers in the amount of $26,680.91 can be appropriated from the district's unallocated general fund balance. It should be noted that all 4 of these mowers are diesel powered and are California Air Resource Control Board Clean Air certified for operational use in California. Therefore, staff is requesting that the board approve the purchase of 1 Toro Groundsmaster 5900 T4 diesel riding mower and 3 Toro Groundsmaster 7200 diesel riding mowers through California Multiple Award Services with the issuance of a purchase order, and authorize the district manager to make the necessary adjustments to the district's budget for fiscal year 24-25 to cover the additional purchase price of $26,860.91. And I'm here to answer any of your questions. And the first
Any
one
questions?
is yes. You can go to the training that Total offers with all their new mowers and drive around and cut one of our parts.
That'd be fun.
I just want to make it clear, he was not pointing to me when he said that's the answer to your question.
So you can actually come and drive, if I want, I can go
Yes.
and drive
Yes,
that.
we have a training day with Toro when we buy new mowers for the safety features to be sure they know how, our staff knows how to operate them. I don't know if you've been in my office, there's a picture of me on training day riding the last time we bought mowers. Mine was a cigar, of course, this time. But yes, you can if you would like to. When we receive them and we set up the training with Toro, you can come out and ride on that 16-foot wide mower if you like.
Well, that might be fun.
That would be fun, that would.
Any questions? There's no comment. Does anyone have a comment from the public? Seeing none, none on Zoom. I just want to say I appreciated the explanation of this way, the service, way it's organized. It was the clearest explanation on how the equipment is used, and I really appreciated the staff report.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, I
I
thought
like
it
to write the stories.
I'll make a motion to approve the board recommendation as to both items.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Director Dennert,
Oh, yes.
Director O'Brien,
Yes.
Vice Chair Avila,
Aye.
and Chair Freeman.
Aye.
The motion carries with Director Gray being absent.
Thank you very much.
We'll go on to item 10, written communications. Does anyone have one?
We've had a gentleman repeatedly comment about the bridge at Mayfair Park, written communication primarily online. We have repeatedly talked to the gentleman. He says the bridge there needs to be painted, which it does. Wayne is aware of it. Wayne we got a lot of stuff going on in terms of maintenance and painting and different issues. We've communicated that to the gentleman, and it's on Wayne's list to complete, and that has been communicated with the person. But he keeps putting online that when's we going to get this done? We've said we're busy and we'll get to it, and it's not. Wayne's focused on safety issues, so when we can do that, we will certainly get it done. In case any of you are seeing that or hearing that.
It's not a safety issue at all?
No.
I mean, it's part of that. I don't know if you're aware of it. He's down with 8 people medical leave, which is greatly affected.
We have that issue. Yes, we have that challenge going on as well.
Wayne's
Yeah.
got a lot of on his plate.
Had a lot of vegetation and trail maintenance and
Yes.
a lot of that stuff this year with the overgrowth, and so we're working very hard, I know, and that is definitely on the list for sure.
No other written communication? Reports by board members, Director Evelyn?
Okay, this is not part of my board member reports, but I have this huge note here, and if I don't mention this, I'm gonna forget. Either before closed session or after the entire meeting, I have a note here. It's not a big deal, but I have to ask you something, Ryan, so I don't screw up. But it's nothing to do with what we're discussing tonight. Okay, number of things. There have been a number of events where I've run into probably, I think every city council member has been at one or another of them, probably some multiple. And I because of that, and a couple of them I did briefly speak about with BMX. I briefly spoke to them about BMX, and but I did reflect, and it's been such a huge issue for us for so long, and I did kind of, there was some intention to it, but I did kind of go a little over the top with comments that I made a couple months ago. And I do kind of regret the rhetoric. I think we have a city council that does a great job, and I do think, they've all said it, and I do really believe that the city council wants to see a BMX track here as well. So I do have some regret about the tone of the comments. I still, though, I think what we have to think of, and all of us, whether it's Brian and I weren't on the board when all of this went down. I know some of the city council members weren't even on the city council when some things were said to us. But I do think everyone wants the same thing, and we've had a good relationship with our city council members. I think that relationship will continue. Everybody's trying to do a great job. I just think what I'd really say is, and we have a new city manager, so we have a new perspective. We really need to try to make this happen. I think what I would say is, the sooner the better, whatever you can do, if you can somehow get us that land so we can get going. And from my point of view, we're willing to work with them. So I just want to reach out. I appreciate all the work they do. For the couple city council members who spoke to me about this briefly, and they were really productive conversations. I know there's a lot of things going on here. There's a lot of moving parts here, and I get that. Just to reach out, whatever we can do. I just feel, that the BMX community really actually thought that at one point that there wasn't going to be a period of time where they were without a track, and it's becoming more and more years, and they still have interest, and the community still has interest. So, let's just all work together and make this happen, and hopefully sooner rather than later. I have to say something. When we discussed districting, there were all sorts of things we discussed, and I think that's probably surprising to some people. I was a huge proponent of it. I must admit, one of the unintended benefits of going to districting, I never anticipated. But given how much they are asking for the initial filing fee for just the divisions that we're divided into now, for one division, I can't imagine if some of these people who are interested in running or may be interested in running, if we still had a Rancho Simi Recreation Park district-wide at-large election, if you do the math, I think we might be appointing board members, because I don't know that people could either afford, that are good people could either afford or would be willing to pay what the filing fee would be.
What is the filing fee?
$1,700 for the ballots.
So I paid $1,850. Brian and I paid $1,850 initially when we ran district-wide. One of the divisions is $1,700, and I believe the other two are $1,600. I'm multiplying by 5, and I think you can figure it out from there. If we were in that situation, I make light of it. It's possible we'd be appointing a board member or something rather than having them elected.
Because that's not even the campaign cost. That's just
that's just for upfront putting down to be able to do a candidate statement. And I think we all know that it's probably, if you're going to run and you don't do a candidate statement in this local of an election, you're probably doomed, unless the other person doesn't do one either. Unless you get together with your opponent and let's duke this out without doing it the way it's supposed to be done. So I just have to say, it's an unintended benefit. I was stunned to see that. I don't get it, but anyway, unintended benefit. Certainly not something I contemplated. We had our golf consultant interviews. I think at this point, I think it next goes before the board. You'll probably be addressing that, Dan. So we had those. The chair was there. Dan, Zach, and David Medley. We were all part of that. I attended National Night Out. Really nice event. Thank you to Teresa, Richard, and Ranger Maradian for being there and for manning the booth. I was going to try to let this slide, but I think it's so obvious that I blew it. I have to say this. So I was at the booth, and I was introducing some people, and there was this person there. I have poor vision. I have poor night vision. I have poor vision, period. I have poor night vision. when there's a glare, that makes it even worse. And I know this person, I think, and then finally the person comes up closer, and well, okay, so it kind of made sense. Didn't really think I'd see her at the park. It was our city manager. So I've known Samantha for years, so I apologize. But I'm glad you came up closer so I could actually see that it was you. You're a rock star. I'm sorry that I didn't recognize you immediately. I kind of tried to fake it, but I think I did such a bad job that I just had to mention. So, but anyway, so Samantha was actually visiting our booth at the same time I was, and I didn't immediately recognize her, so I feel bad about that. But so saw her there, saw Chief Shorts, and which brings me to my next point. I did talk with Chief Shorts at some length last night, and so I believe there was a staff meeting about several staff meetings about security cameras, and I know one of the things I mentioned some locations, and one of the things that's come to my mind in the last couple days is, you know, we've talked about the Oak Park situation for our employees. I mean, obviously, I think we also need to look, as I mentioned, at the activity center, Santa Sue, the golf courses. I don't know what the situation is at Strathern, but it did dawn on me, and I was speaking with Zach and Aaron about this before the meeting. I think another place where they probably would come in handy would be the pool. I think any of the outer areas where we have employees, I think needs to be strongly considered for security cameras. But what I was talking to Chief Shorts about is I know as we go to this, and then obviously there's a couple of the problem parks that we want to be concerned about. As we go to this, I know there's probably going to be concern about, you know, where do we put them, how do we do this right? And so I was asking Chief Shorts, you know, I don't want to see us spending a whole lot of money, you know, bringing in experts or bringing in consultants if we don't have to. And I just asked, I said, I mean, do you have anybody at your department that maybe could help us out? And again, I don't know the details, and we had a really general discussion. But I do think from my discussion with Chief Shorts is that they, not only would they be willing to help us out with that, but I think they'd actually find it desirable because of the necessary coordination that we have with our rangers and with Simi Valley Police Department. So I hope that's something that we look at from the standpoint both of cost, so that we don't need to pay for something we don't need to pay for, but also to be on the same page with Simi Valley PD, which I think is probably going to have to be the case if we do this the right way. So, hopefully our staff, and certainly I hope to follow up with Chief Shorts on that. But I think to the extent that helps us, that may be a wise way to go here.
I stopped by the pool for Lifeguard Appreciation Day. I was very impressed with a soda bar that they set up for the lifeguards. The lifeguards have felt appreciated because they have an important job. I brought some donuts and they were impressed by that. Moore Park CKI, who was an Earth Day winner last year, the college club, they were meeting in July and they cleaned up Tumash Park. I was very impressed with them because they didn't even have school. I'm like, you guys are out of school right now. How do you still have a club going? But they kept volunteering, so I appreciate it. Kate, I want to thank you. On Friday, she's going to help projects at the Reagan Library.
Yeah.
I apologize, I didn't realize this. This one happens to be on Zoom.
Yeah, it turns out.
I didn't mean to do that to you, I'm sorry.
So, yeah, we can do Zoom. I got the email today. So.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
It's really fun to go.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that this session was on Zoom. Normally they're in person. But they have students from throughout the country. They train in leadership, and then they pitch their projects like Shark Tank, and they get feedback from the community leaders. So I appreciate you volunteering doing that. I went to Lake Gregory in Crestline, and they have in their lake an obstacle course that's like our obstacle course at Rancho Park, except massive. I mean, it's a lake, but it's massive. And the reason I bring it up is maybe not right now, but it's part of our budget. If we want to add a couple more features to the obstacle course, I'm open to that. The best option feature they had was you swim out to it, and I'm going to describe it as a whoopee cushion. But you have a kid sit on a huge inflatable part here, and then somebody jumps off, lands, and launches the kid into the lake. So not only was it fun, but think about what it does for families. Like, you have to cooperate as a family. Like, who's the best at jumping off of this, and who's the kid that we're gonna make go fly the farthest? And sometimes you'd see like dads and moms jumping together, and the kids go flying. Maybe that specific one's not good for our park, but
I want to keep them in the pool.
that's a good tip. Good tip.
Sounds really cool.
But there's a lot of other features that they had too. If we want to add to that, I'm open to that. And lastly, for BMX, I do understand it'd be ideal to have a BMX track, and I support that. But at a certain point, we have to decide, do we want to pursue other options? And what I don't want to do is pursue two options at once. You know, this one and that one. And I bring this up in board comments, not to have a long discussion, but because we're talking about future agenda items. I'd like in the future to talk about other options broadly, and then maybe move on from the option that we're waiting on, because I believe the last meeting with the city was in July, where many people came to a city council meeting and they said maybe in 90 days, I think that was October last year. We haven't heard any update, correct, or any timeline or any. So I don't have a good answer when the community asks me about a BMX track. Like, well, we're waiting for the city. How long have you been doing that for? Well, it's been a while. When's the next update? I don't have one. So I'd like an agenda item where we could discuss it in the future, different options. And obviously at the not detailed level, so staff doesn't have to write reports with all the cost and everything, because maybe some options one of us likes and none of the rest of us likes, so we wouldn't pursue it. But we could also let the biking community know that we're just discussing options, or maybe just asking for an update. That's it for me.
Director Bryan. Yes, I had a few meetings. I went to the violence in the workplace presentation on the first. I think we all had to go. Were you guys there too? I didn't see any of you, but.
I earned a certificate from the school district and I forwarded that on.
Ah.
I just had done the training.
Cool. I was there. You were there. And I guess you were there too. It was informative. I would have liked to have seen more information on what you do if somebody, when there is violence. And there was a lot of talking about sort of it was good information, focused more on the legal aspect, which was probably necessary, but a little more information about, not panicking and how you handle it when that does actually happen. God forbid it ever should. But you never know, as we say. I went to the Tex Ward memorial service that same day, along with Director Friedman was there. I didn't realize how long he'd been with Mayo Raycom Park. It had been a long time.
1968.
Yeah, like almost 4 decades, since he was a young man. But that was a good thing to go to, and like I said, it sounds like he had a major impact on that community, so it was good. I was at the Historical Society meeting on Monday, also with Director Freeman. There's a lot going on there. I noticed that Ed said he's like Wayne said he was seriously short-handed because a lot of people are out on medical leave, and it would be nice if there was something we could do, like hire temp people, but then they have to be trained by people that we don't have to train them because they're all out on medical leave. So it sounds like a catch-22. Is there any way to? I guess there's no way to fix that.
Yeah, the board did, I think last year allocated 2 extra maintenance positions in the budget.
Yeah.
And part of the goal there was to provide some relief for people that are on IOD, injured on duty, so to speak, or injured on work, as long as to do some additional work in the field. So the board did, attempt. The part-timers, it is a challenge. It's good when we get a good part-timer that stays here a while. It does, as Wayne will tell you, it takes a while to train them up. But we did hire a couple extra bodies to try to cover for some of these things. Recruiting's an issue, part-time's an issue, so we continue. The board did raise hourly rates for the part-time staff, so we did that last year as well. So hopefully we'll stick at it. I'll have a conversation with Wayne to see if there's anything else I can do to to help him get the bodies that he needs to do the work, so.
Okay, good. Lots of volunteers though. It sounds like they've got a lot of activities there they're doing, and the president of the Historical Society was saying that they have a lot of volunteers working really hard, so that's awesome. I know a few months ago they were running low on docents, but now it seems to have solved itself. And I also had the special districts meeting last night. And the speaker, of course, was Kara, who is the president of VCSDA, talking about Camarillo Health District. I was impressed. I had no idea they were doing so many things. All I knew about them when from years and years ago was that they were a hospital district with no hospital, but then they revamped and redefined what they did and reached out and figured out.
It's really quite amazing.
Yeah, it is actually pretty amazing. And I learned things about healthcare that I didn't know before too. So that was a very interesting talk and productive meeting. Frontier Park and all the other parks that along the Arroyo that are having problems. If we do the cameras, the security cameras, could we do something like noisemakers too? And there's got to be, if you have a motion sensitive camera or a motion sensitive light, you should be able to, there's probably technology to have noise making, I don't know, alarms or something if somebody's moving around at 2 in the morning in the park. Is that
We can look at
doable?
that.
Yeah.
Other than its impact on the residents that are trying to sleep right there.
Well, yeah, I thought of that. It's true. I understand that, but we're trying to. The residents are all here saying, "Please fix this problem." So we're trying to fix it.
I was going to report out on that during my report.
What difference does it make? They're probably not sleeping well anyway, right?
They're probably too frightened of what's going. Yeah, we've got to do something. The lights
I've
coming
seen
on are
that.
going to wake everybody up too. It's just a thought.
Kate, I have seen that where a camera goes off and it says, "You're being recorded."
Something of that sort would actually work. In a scary sounding voice, like Darth Vader or something. This is just a thought. Maybe we should look into that. I don't know. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I attended the city council meeting when they had the grant for our van. Thanked them. And then at that meeting, it came up on some open space issues with oil seepage, which I've been in touch with Wayne and Dan. If you hear about it, and you might hear about it because the fellow that's the activist with it, he probably will bring it forward. It's just a natural phenomenon out there, and we have protections to keep it from running. And it's governed, it's our property, but the oil is monitored by the county. So if you hear about it, it's under control, just so that you know. Okay. I was part of the golf reviews with the consultants, and you'll be hearing more on that. I think all of you did this too, is the activity center review of the plans. And I appreciate what staff has done putting the options together. I went to the shooter training. I'm not sure, do you have follow-up meetings with the department heads on what they're supposed to do individually?
So the shooter training was separate from the training we did for workplace violence.
Well, that's
so
what
we had a whole
workplace
separate.
Violence.
Yeah.
Do each of the department heads know specifically what their job is?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's coordinated with. So remember, this is new for us. There's a new state law, so all of that we heard legally, and the requirement for a plan and a report just is brand new. So that was the kickoff of our plan, and it's going to take us some time to develop and implement the plan, but that is a part of the implementation plan and a part of the training.
Okay.
That's why we did the kickoff meeting, to make all the employees aware in one place of the bigger picture, and then will be more to come as we implement the
Because
plan.
I was thinking if I was a department head or a
Yeah.
supervisor, I'd wonder, well, what am I supposed to do next?
Yeah, we have not, that was a training on the plan. We have not implemented the plan yet
Okay.
because it's brand new for us, and we'll be working over the next several months, 6 months to implement the plan. So a lot of what you're talking about will come through the implementation.
I would suggest that you did that for now, that you're working on the implementation.
Yes, thank you.
I know you do that anyway, but it just occurred to me, if I was a department head or supervisor, I wouldn't know what to do.
That's why we have HR, because they
Yeah.
call them and say, what should I do?
I've had the CSDA legislative meeting, and this has been a really very difficult legislative year. I've never seen so many bills that the legislature is trying to tell us how to run our business. I mean, it is really quite remarkable. One on repairing a certain type of gate. I mean, we have 12 of them. Normally, if something went wrong, we fix it. But this spells out what we would have to do. Couldn't do it in-house, have to get a contractor, have to have it inspected. It's just that kind of which I think is really fascinating on the state legislature, where they come from local government, not understanding what the impact is on local government. That's an editorial comment. Went to the Tex Ward Celebration of Life, and he was actually responsible for Costco and
MRCA.
very active in the MRCA and in Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. It was amazing what he did for that community over the years, and really established the whole open space. I mean, he was really involved in the whole open space preservation. Amazing. Went to Ventura County Special District last night. Some of the training, I guess you'd call the equipment they use, is actually worth looking into, maybe some future for us. And let's see if there was anything else. I did talk to the head of recreation for Santa Clarita, and their BMX track is functioning. The guy indicated that it wasn't, but it is. I talked to them, and the thing is that it's not a sanctioned track, but it's the same. I don't think our track at Sycamore was sanctioned either. It's just a practice area. So they do have that option, and Camarillo has theirs open. So at least they have facilities where before all those people from Camarillo and Santa Clarita were coming here. Now it's the other way. So at least they do have the service if they choose to use it. And I think that's it. Thank you. We'll go to district manager report.
Thank you, Chair. Frontier Park, we have had a couple coordinating meetings to include the police department. We are installing lighting and cameras at the location. We also have already installed fencing at the location. Remember, there was the topic of the easement area. So one of the recommendations of the police department was to limit the path of travel in and out of that park. So we've already completed that.
Excuse me, I need to, did you do the full length of the park along the green?
No, the part that's on our property line, yeah, going north to south, not east to west. Yeah.
The one that goes between the two houses.
Oh, just that. I was going to say, because along the greenway, that's a big.
Yeah, we're not doing that.
I mean, that's huge.
We've already been out there and upbrushed and removed all the vegetation so that the rangers and the police department has line of sight. Our rangers are doing extra patrols, and so is the police department. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on that, but there's a lot of activity with extra patrols. And we're doing community outreach in the neighborhood. The lights will probably, we're getting a quote on that. They're kind of temporary construction type lights, kind of permanent temporary. There won't be, park design lights, but those will be out there hopefully in the next week or two. So it's a multi-pronged plan, extra patrols, looking at design. We talked about design of the park, and then also some extra eyes and ears on the park. So, and we've been out to the community several times, our community outreach officer and the police department, and we have further plans to continue to communicate with the community. So that is going well, and I want to thank the police department for their attention to the matter. They've been on it, and we're working in concert with them on the patrol piece and the recommendations, ideas. We did meet golf course concessions. That RFP is out. I believe it closes on Friday. We do have some interest. I don't know that we have any specific vendors yet, but we had several folks that had, or a couple at least, that have expressed interest. So more to come on that after Friday. We did final interviews with the golf course manager. That is still, we did extend an offer that is subject to background. I usually hold off on making a formal announcement until the whole hiring process is complete. But that is underway. We did complete the golf course RFP meeting. We'll have a recommendation of the board soon. I'll get to that in a minute when we get to the calendar for your upcoming board meetings, but that will be before you for consideration shortly. Elaine mentioned the mobile rec van, the grant from the city was approved. So that is nice. Wayne and I did meet with the Triumphant Water District. There's more to come on this. They would like to get some of our property around a facility that they have, and kind of a government-to-government transaction. So there'll be more to come on that for the board. We also met with the Garrity Group, which is doing the development on the corner of Tapo and Alamo. They did request the fee waiver, fee reduction for park fees. I will be addressing, bringing that to you guys as well, and discussing that as well, and giving you our thoughts on it. Ed, thank you for bringing up security cameras. That's nice that the police department is certainly willing to engage in this, and we'll use them. We do have a group of people within staff, Sandra and Laura and Jennifer Santos, that are looking at this. It is, like Ed, you mentioned, locations, retention, quality of camera. So there's a whole host of, there's a whole host of complexities. Our plan is to research the issue, look at what other park districts are doing, get police department input, and then bring kind of a policy level discussion to the board, hopefully in September, and get some direction from you guys and kind of the scope of what you want us to pursue. There's all kinds of vendors, different types of cameras, different monitoring, so we're going to bring you a good comprehensive report so you can kind of narrow that for us and let us know what you're interested in. From there, we'll start the process of getting some cameras if the board is interested. We did get the grant approved for the...
I just want to say, I think that's great that you're involving multiple staff members. I think that's ideal. And, you know, I only mentioned the police department, you know, to the extent that we need help. I would rather go that route than hire someone from the outside to... You know,
there's a couple different approaches. One is you can get a security company or a camera company, and they'll come and do the evaluation for you, and then kind of the evaluation or the expertise is a part of that. Or you can, like you said, Ed, get some other expertise from the police department, have them do it, and then they're recommending what type of equipment you might want to use. So that'll be a part of our discussion when we bring it back, which way you guys want to go on that. We did get the state approved using the funds from the per capita grant for the equestrian center, so that's a positive thing. Follow up for Brian, Hummingbird trail markers, you mentioned that. The MRCA is working with a Boy Scout to extend the trail markers on Hummingbird Trail onto their property. So that's underway. I do need to follow up with you on the open space at Santa Sue and a potential ribbon cutting. There's some nuances there that I need to talk through with you relative to that. I did want to mention the workplace violence training. Kate brought it up, and so did Elaine. We did conduct that, and we'll be implementing that plan. That's positive. I did want to thank the staff for the National Night Out. That event, in my experience, has really grown over the last number of years, and it's an awesome event, and I'll extend my thank you to Richard and Teresa and Edmund for attending that on behalf of the Park District. I also want to let you know the school board, for the pool decking project, the school district had agreed to pay a fair share of that project. That is on the school board agenda on August 20th. It is on their consent calendar. So Mr. Toto is going to know if we need anybody there to speak for that, but I don't think we do at this point. So that concludes my report. Upcoming board meetings, we got a lot going on. And I think we're going to have to kind of spread this out over the next 3 meetings. I'll kind of list the items. We've got a award of contract for Knowles Park Playground. We've got the activity center concept that we briefed the board on individually, but we're going to bring that back to the board. That's scheduled for the 24th. You've got the district manager's evaluation scheduled for the 21st. We do have a program put together for mental health, a mental health initiative. So we want to get that to the board and get your input and thoughts on what we put together on that. We've also got a potential contract to hire a financial advisor to look at our investments. That needs to come back to the board. And then we've got water conservation turf removal. The board had asked us to bring that item back at some point given potential increases in water costs. I got previous direction to bring back BMX track alternate locations. So that's on our agenda over the next few meetings. We've got the security.
To clarify on that, I'm not saying I want staff to research all the locations and write it up, just broader.
Yeah, just to have a discussion about it. Okay. We have another closed session for the district manager. We've got the security camera item that we're working on bringing back to the board, and then we have a vehicle purchase. So those are the items we have to deal with. I'm going to work on getting those scheduled so we have reasonably linked meetings over the next 2 or 3 meetings.
I wanted you to finish before I asked this. Is it pretty safe to assume that the activity center will be on the 21st though?
Yes.
Okay. And then obviously on the security cameras, on the one hand, I'd rather have it sooner rather than later, but I want to make sure that, you know, we've done all the homework we need to do. So I'd like that sooner rather than later, but not at the expense of having looked into it.
The staff that's working on it said they're shooting for a date in September, one of the September meetings. So we think we can achieve the security cameras then and then still address these other issues.
That's great.
And the mental health will either be next meeting or September 4th. I know that's important to the board. So we'll balance these 2 meetings out and then maybe slip a couple of the others into the third meeting or the second meeting in September. So that's what's on tap for items for the board, and I believe there are no committee meetings. That concludes my report.
Dan, I have a question about trainings. So do board members need to go to those?
Yeah. So usually elected officials these days on the trainings, it's required the ethics training, harassment training, and then workplace violence. Recently, we have been recording when the trainings occur. We've been recording those trainings and making those available online so that it doesn't say how we have to do the trainings, it's that we have to do it with everybody. So if you didn't do those, we both have the harassment training and the recent workplace violence training available via video that you can meet the requirement by watching those videos. But normally, I think all 3 of those are elected officials are also required to do those, yes.
With that, we can go to a closed session at 9:10.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, Directors. We have 3 items listed on the closed session agenda. One regarding existing litigation involving the Richard Horn case. We have 2 anticipated litigation as we received written claims. Those will be considered under Government Code Section 54956.9 D2. And with that, we may enter closed session.
Closed session is over at 9:35.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one reportable action. So the board met in closed session pursuant to the items listed on the closed session agenda. The board by unanimous vote decided to reject the claim by Ms. Powers as set forth in agenda item 13C. Thank you.
Any other business to come before this board? Meeting adjourned.